Tiana's actions were swift and well-rehearsed, the result of countless hours spent enduring long shifts. Her curly dark locks were pulled back into a loose ponytail, while her well-worn sneakers let out faint squeaks against the tiled floor. The diner was bustling that evening, alive with the hum of families enjoying meals, couples lost in conversation, and weary truckers stopping for a late-night bite. Despite the fatigue etched into her face, Tiana greeted every patron with a courteous smile. This wasn't just a workplace for her, it was her anchor, the job that kept a roof over her head in her small apartment, and food in her kitchen. Over the years, Tiana had perfected the art of remaining composed through everything: demanding customers, chaotic dinner rushes, and the occasional heated disagreement at the counter. Tonight, she expected no deviations from the norm. As she returned to the counter to collect the next order, the bell above the entrance chimed. Tiana barely glanced up. She was accustomed to the constant influx of customers. A man entered, draped in a gray hoodie and jeans, his hood pulled up over his head. A brief glimpse of his face revealed a vaguely recognizable profile, though Tiana couldn't place where she'd seen it before. She decided not to dwell on it. The man quietly took a seat in the far corner booth, his head bent over a glowing phone screen. Tiana grabbed her notepad. "Good evening. What can I get for you?" she asked with a practiced warmth. He lifted his head briefly, his pale, steely blue eyes meeting hers for just a moment. Something about his understated demeanor felt familiar, but Tiana shrugged it off. "Just a burger and fries," he said softly, his voice low and even. "Got it. Anything to drink?" "Water's fine." Tiana jotted the order down and headed back to the kitchen. She'd encountered all sorts of people in this diner: locals, travelers, even the occasional famous face passing through town. Whoever this man was, she figured he just wanted to eat his meal quietly. When she returned with a glass of water, she noticed some of the regular customers whispering and sneaking glances at the man in the hoodie. One middle-aged man in a suit, seated at the counter, leaned toward his companion, murmuring something about politics. Tiana ignored it. She made it a point not to involve herself in her customers' personal lives. A few minutes later, she delivered the man's plate to his booth. "Enjoy your meal," she said politely, offering her signature smile. "Thanks," he replied without looking up. Tiana moved on to serve the next table, but the murmurs surrounding the man grew louder. A couple of patrons openly stared at him, their expressions tinged with distrust and disapproval. The lively chatter that had filled the diner earlier began to dissipate, replaced by an undercurrent of unease. Tiana glanced over at the man in the booth. He continued eating quietly, causing no disturbance and drawing no attention to himself. Yet, for reasons she couldn't grasp, his presence had thrown the room into tension. Then, the man in the suit slammed his coffee mug onto the counter, his voice rising above the hushed murmurs. "Is that really who I think it is?" he demanded, his face flushed with indignation. "I can't believe you're serving him here." Tiana froze mid-step, her heart sinking as every eye in the diner turned toward the corner booth. The air grew heavy, and the faint clatter of silverware and plates came to an abrupt halt. Gathering herself, Tiana turned toward the man at the counter, determined to keep the situation from escalating further. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice steady and professional. "Is there a problem?" The man in the suit pushed his stool back and gestured toward the booth, his voice brimming with outrage. "Of course there's a problem. Do you even know who that is? You're serving him. That's Elon Musk." A wave of recognition rippled through the diner. Tiana's stomach churned as she glanced back at the man in the booth, who now looked up, his expression calm but watchful. Elon Musk, a tech magnate, a billionaire, and a lightning rod for controversy. Yet at that moment, he looked like nothing more than a man quietly eating a burger. "I don't care who he is," Tiana said evenly, her voice unshaken. "He's a customer, just like anyone else." The man in the suit bristled. "He doesn't belong here. People like him, stirring up trouble and division, they're not welcome in this community." Tiana scanned the room. Some customers avoided eye contact, clearly uncomfortable, while others nodded in silent agreement with the man. Musk, still seated, took a slow sip of his water, his gaze flickering between Tiana and the brewing confrontation. Taking a deep breath, Tiana addressed the man again. "Sir, I understand you feel strongly about this, but this is a diner, not a forum for debate. He's here to eat, not to cause problems. Let's keep things civil." "Civil?" the man scoffed. "You call this civil? By serving him, you're enabling him. If you had any decency, you'd refuse service." Tiana's pulse quickened, but her voice remained steady. "My job is to treat every customer with respect, regardless of who they are or what they believe. If you can't respect that, I'll have to ask you to leave." The man's face turned red, his outrage boiling over. "Unbelievable," he muttered, shaking his head. "Fine. If this is how you run things, I won't be coming back." He tossed a $20 bill onto the counter and stormed out, the door slamming shut behind him with a harsh jingle of the bell. Tiana exhaled deeply, trying to steady her nerves as the diner fell into an uneasy silence. She could feel the weight of every gaze on her, the heat of embarrassment creeping up her neck. Some customers looked down at their plates, avoiding her eyes entirely, while a few offered her faint nods of approval. From the corner booth, Musk finally spoke, breaking the quiet. His tone was calm, almost measured. "That was impressive," he said. Tiana gave a small, polite nod and replied, "I'm just doing my job." She quickly busied herself with grabbing a coffee pot, eager to distract herself from the tension lingering in the air. But before she could fully collect her thoughts, another voice pierced the uneasy quiet. "Tiana, my office." Now, she turned toward the kitchen doorway to see her manager, Jeff, standing there, his arms crossed and his expression sour. A knot tightened in her chest, but she followed him to the back office, her heart sinking with every step. The cramped office felt stifling as Jeff slammed the door behind her. He wasted no time launching into his tirade. "What the hell was that out there?" he demanded, his voice sharp. Tiana kept her tone steady, despite the anxiety building in her chest. "I was handling the situation," she replied calmly. Jeff let out a harsh laugh, shaking his head in disbelief. "Handling it? You escalated it. That guy, he's a regular, Tiana, and now he's gone because you decided to cause a scene defending some billionaire." He waved his hand dismissively, his frustration clear. Tiana's jaw tightened, but she maintained her composure. "I didn't cause a scene," she said firmly. "I did my job. Mr. Musk is a paying customer, and that man was out of line." Jeff rubbed his temples as if trying to keep his patience in check. "You just don't get it, do you? This isn't just about one customer. You stirred up drama in the middle of our busiest night. I can't have that." He paused before delivering the blow. "You're done here." Tiana stared at him, stunned. "You're firing me? For what? For standing up for someone's right to eat in peace?" Jeff shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "Call it whatever you want," he said, his tone cold. "You're out." For a long moment, Tiana simply stood there, her chest tightening as the weight of his words sank in. Finally, she let out a breath and straightened her shoulders. "Fine," she said quietly, grabbing her bag from the corner of the office. Without another word, she pushed past Jeff and walked out into the diner. She ignored the stares of both customers and co-workers as she made her way toward the door. As she passed Musk's booth, he caught her eye and gave her a small nod of gratitude. But it didn't matter not in that moment. The cold night air greeted her as she stepped outside, her mind racing. Fired, just like that. She wasn't sure how she'd explain it to herself, let alone anyone else. But despite the uncertainty, one thing she knew for sure. She couldn't bring herself to regret standing up for what she believed was right. The chilly night air stung against her cheeks as Tiana trudged toward the bus stop. The distant hum of Austin streets barely registered in her mind, drowned out by her own thoughts. That one word "fired" echoed in her head, heavier with every step she took. For years, the diner had been her safety net, her steady albeit modest source of income, and now it was gone. She sank onto the bench beneath the flickering streetlight, letting her bag drop to the ground beside her. Her fingers trembled slightly as she pulled out her phone to check her bank balance. It wasn't much, just enough to scrape by for the next couple of weeks. Rent was due soon, and groceries would need to stretch. When the bus finally arrived, she climbed aboard and slumped into a seat near the window. Her reflection stared back at her from the glass-starred eyes, worry etched into her brow, and the faint shimmer of tears she refused to let fall. The scene at the diner replayed over and over in her mind. Could she have handled it differently? Would staying silent have saved her job? A part of her couldn't help but wonder. But deep down she knew the answer. No. She had done what she believed was right, and if standing by her principles had cost her the job, so be it. The ride to her apartment was short, and soon Tiana was climbing the creaky stairs to her unit. The chipped paint on the door felt like a reflection of her own life, functional but worn, holding on by a thread. Inside, the apartment was dimly lit, furnished with second-hand pieces, and adorned with a single potted plant on the windowsill. She dropped her bag by the door and sank onto the couch, her body heavy with exhaustion. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, and she pulled it out, hoping for some good news. It was a text from her best friend, Monica. "Just heard what happened. Jeff's an idiot. Call me if you need anything." A faint smile tugged at Tiana's lips. Monica always had her back. Still, tonight, Tiana didn't have the energy to talk. She typed out a quick reply. "Thanks. I'll be okay. Just need some time." As the hours dragged on, sleep eluded her. She lay on the couch, staring up at the cracked ceiling as silence pressed in around her. Her thoughts drifted back to the diner, to the customers, to Musk. He hadn't done anything to warrant the hostility he'd faced, at least not that night. He was just a man trying to enjoy a quiet meal. Why did such a simple idea seem so radical to some people? Eventually, exhaustion overtook her, and Tiana drifted into a restless sleep. The next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds, waking Tiana earlier than she would have liked. Her body ached from the awkward angle she'd slept in, and her mind was still clouded with worry. She shuffled into the kitchen to make herself a cup of coffee, the bitterness of it mirroring her mood. She was halfway through her first sip when she heard the low, distinct hum of an electric car pulling up outside. Curiosity got the better of her, and she set her mug down before peeking through the window. Parked in front of her building was a sleek, metallic Tesla. Her heart skipped a beat as the driver's door opened, and none other than Elon Musk stepped out. He looked just as he had at the diner, casual and unassuming, but his presence on her quiet street felt almost surreal. Tiana froze, unsure of what to do as Musk approached her door. The soft knock that followed snapped her out of her stupor, and she hurried to answer it. "Mr. Musk?" she asked, her voice tinged with disbelief. He gave her a polite smile. "Good morning. I hope I'm not intruding." "No, not at all. Come in," she stammered, still processing the sight of one of the world's most recognizable figures standing on her doorstep. As Musk stepped inside, his demeanor was relaxed but purposeful. "I wanted to thank you," he began, his tone sincere. "What you did last night standing up for meat didn't go unnoticed. I know it cost you your job, and I'm sorry for that."